A few days ago, I put out my yearly Nintendo prediction video, where I go over every quarter of the upcoming year and lay out what I think is going down, complemented by some goofy fake logos. It's a lot of fun, and this year's pitch was definitely on the grander side, attempting to nail the Switch 2's massive launch lineup. But despite covering an enormous number of series in the video, there was one franchise that remained completely absent: Animal Crossing. No news, no update, no spin-off, and definitely not a new mainline game. So, if that's the case, when can we expect Animal Crossing 6? Well, despite a lack of concrete info on the subject, I think it is possible to estimate a release window, and thankfully, I don't think it's too far off. Now, Animal Crossing is currently in a pretty weird place release-wise. The logical first step in estimating a franchise's next game would be to analyze the timing of its past titles. Simple enough. But AC's has become kinda iffy. Rolling back to 2002, you've got the worldwide release of Animal Crossing GameCube, jumpstarting the series' global reputation. Said reputation grew tenfold when Animal Crossing Wild World dropped in 2005, being the series' first major success at just under 12 million units sold. Up next is City Folk in 2008. Important to keep in mind that carrying so much over from Wild World likely would have lessened its dev time, but you know, I'm not a game producer or anything, moving on. New Leaf debuted worldwide in 2013, revitalizing the franchise for a whole new audience and giving it the push it needed to join Nintendo's Big Four. So already, we can see a pretty noticeable pattern followed by a deviation. 3 years from GameCube to Wild World, 3 years from Wild World to City Folk, and 5 from City Folk to New Leaf. However, this isn't all that surprising when you consider just how important New Leaf's success was to Nintendo. After City Folk only earned a fraction of Wild World's profit, the dev team was focused on revitalizing the franchise, hence the extended development period and very lucrative results. But I wouldn't let this discourage us. After all, the franchise went back to 3-year releases right after the fact, right? Right? Here's the wrench in our estimations: New Horizons, releasing a whopping 7 years after New Leaf. I know, other franchises have it worse, I get it, I'm a Pikmin fan. I say whopping in the context of the series' typical output. Now, I think there are a few reasons as to why that was, most of which are also important in pinpointing the next game's timing. 1, pretty obviously, the Wii U. It's no secret that in spite of its vocal fanbase, of which I am a part of, this thing was a commercial failure. So much so that halfway through the generation, Nintendo had to abandon ship and scramble to shift focus over to the upcoming NX, which of course became the Switch. Naturally, this would have majorly impacted the timing of the next Animal Crossing game. With New Leaf dropping 2012 in Japan and 2013 worldwide, by the time a Wii U game could have come out, the system would already be on death's door. Which I guess you could argue it was during the entire generation, so I don't know, closer, through death's dog door. But as we know, Animal Crossing didn't stay completely dead during those 7 years, which brings us to point 2, spin-offs. For the first time in series history, Animal Crossing received spin-off games in between entries, quite a few actually. Happy Home Designer, allowing fans to flex their creative muscles, Amiibo Festival, giving Wii U owners even less of a reason to own the system, and Pocket Camp, making the series' first step into the mobile space. And while none of these quite made up for the extended wait between mainline titles, especially not you, they at least ensured that the brand was active during that period, something I imagine is very important to Nintendo when considering how long to spend working on a new title. Revisiting the 3DS through Happy Home Designer also allowed us to receive New Leaf's Welcome Amiibo update, the best Animal Crossing thing to release in that time, so I'm not complaining too much. But, in the midst of all this camping and smashing whatnot, something else was going on behind the scenes. Between New Leaf and New Horizons, a seed was planted, nurtured, and grown into something enormous: Splatoon. Despite getting its start on the Wii U, Splatoon has seen remarkable success in its short 9 years of existence. It did about as well as it could have on that system, selling just under titles like Smash 4 and New Super Mario Bros. U to become the Wii U's 6th best performing game. But it was the Switch era where this thing really took off. I'm talking 13.6 million units, major uptick in branding, and a sequel on the same hardware that's not far behind too sales-wise. So why is this relevant? Because Animal Crossing and Splatoon share a division. EPD5, led by Aiki Goku, is one of Nintendo's 10 entertainment planning and development divisions. Essentially, this is one specific group inside of Nintendo tasked with working on a specific set of games. Said games happen to be the Animal Crossing and Splatoon series. Now, before we proceed, I think it's important to iron out what this really means. I've seen a lot of confusion surrounding what impact sharing a division actually has on a title, and wasn't entirely sure myself in the first half of the Switch era until I decided to look further into it. The common misconception is that Animal Crossing and Splatoon both being EPD5 IPs means they share a development team. this is false. In reality, EPD5 is more like a pool that both of these franchises pull from to build their respective staff, meaning that while there's obviously a non-negligible level of overlap, some employees exclusively work on Animal Crossing and some exclusively work on Splatoon. That said, this is obviously something to keep in mind when looking to the future of either franchise. It's no coincidence that we got 2 entire Splatoon entries in between Animal Crossing titles. The staff members that work on both still have priorities at any one time, which, by extension, means that the division has priorities at any one time. Through comparing the credits of both New Horizons and Splatoon 3, I discovered that just under 33% of their staff is shared, which doesn't sound like a lot if you initially expected it to be 100%, but if you compare to the 0% you'll get contrasting games led by separate divisions, you'll see why I call it non-negligible. That's a third of a dev team, and only for these specific entries. It could easily trend higher depending on the circumstances between releases or just general shifts in hiring. There is something to be said about whether or not cramming these 2 major franchises into one division is what's best for either series, but that's a topic for another video. So, to fully pinpoint the next Animal Crossing release, we need to predict the coin flip. Heads or tails? Where do EPD5's priorities lie? Tails. It's obviously Animal Crossing. Really, there was no reason to call it a coin flip outside of the obvious animal pun. Coin flip implies randomness, while this is anything but. There's some pretty obvious pointers to Animal Crossing being next up on the EPD5 docket. Firstly, New Horizons. The game that got us into this speculative mess is obviously the thing that's getting us out of it. Cause I don't know if you realize, but this game, it was kind of a big deal. Now, Animal Crossing was no sales slouch in the past. New Leaf's 13 mil and Wild World's 12 are nothing to sneeze at. But New Horizons didn't just majorly surpass those numbers, it surpassed gaming. When you launch at the start of a pandemic, suddenly Animal Crossing isn't just a video game. It's a communication tool, it's a canvas, it's a KFC apparently, I don't know. The already massive series grew beyond what anyone, even Nintendo, ever anticipated. There is no way they're not capitalizing on that as we speak and cooking up the next game for the Switch too. Especially if we look at our second reason, Splatoon 3 just happened. I mean, I know they've double dipped in ink in the past, but after Animal Crossing's proven what it has, I doubt they're doing that again, especially when 3's updates and DLC haven't even wrapped up yet. Okay, so we've pretty solidly ruled Animal Crossing the winner in the EPD5 squabble, but that doesn't necessarily mean Animal Crossing is coming soon. Right now, we're just over the halfway point if we go by the previous stretch between games. Who's to say we won't have to wait double what we already have? Well, to be honest, I don't think those 7 years were ever meant to happen. We've already gone over how the Wii U messed with things, but New Horizons face another hurdle that simply won't exist for the next game: the hardware jump. Back in the olden days of 2016 and prior, Nintendo's hardware was separated into home consoles and handhelds. Some franchises stuck primarily to one side, some stuck to the other, but some series like to jump between both. Animal Crossing was one such series, and did so in a pretty recognizable fashion too, from GameCube to DS to Wii to 3DS. This is what resulted in the speedy releases of the series past. There was always new hardware to drop an Animal Crossing onto. The Switch merged these two lines, which might sound like a bad thing in this context, I know, but I promise you this is good. You see, Animal Crossing was already evolving. We saw that shift in release timing that New Leaf created, 5 years compared to the typical 3, and that's largely thanks to the game's ambition. New Leaf was larger than its predecessors, more expansive, more innovative, and its extended development time reflected that. We were never going back to the 3-year waits of old. Just like gaming as a whole, things got bigger. Well, as big as you can be on a screen this size. New Leaf, despite its grandness, was stuck on the 3DS. And hey, I love this thing, not knocking its quality in the slightest, but what this meant is when shifting over to New Horizons, the Animal Crossing team had the Herculean task of jumping from 240p to 1080p. Not only the series' biggest technical leap so far, but also its first true step into HD. I say true because the team got to dip their toe into the concept with Animal Crossing Plaza, a Wii U eShop release that likely existed solely for this reason. A technological transfer this large could have proved demanding for the team and contributed to that 7-year-long wait. But, thanks to the Switch, it's unlikely anything like that will happen again, because now Animal Crossing 6 has a base. And not an Animal Crossing Plaza type test base, no, a real base. A full Animal Crossing game on hardware that's likely comparable in power and similar in design to its successor, with plenty of assets to pull from and upgrade. The sub 5-year releases might be a thing of the past, but so is the constant need to adapt to vastly different systems with vastly different hardware. Alright, Animal Crossing 6, not too far off. But the question is, how close are we talking here? Nailing it down to kinda soon isn't exactly impressive. So for this final section, I'd like to go through some process of elimination here. Animal Crossing is one of Nintendo's big four. These are franchises that they have complete ownership of, hence no Pokemon or even something like Kirby. Nintendo views these series as their most important pillars, making their early presence on new hardware invaluable. 2017, first year of the Switch, and 3 out of 4 of these franchises had immediate, enormous releases on the new hardware. These are your system sellers, you can't ignore them for long. So, assuming the Switch 2 is dropping next fall, which of these series can feasibly show up in those early days? Mario? 100%. Odyssey was 7 years ago, the team's obviously been cooking, probably a launch title. Splatoon? We've already gone over why that won't be the case. Zelda. Now, a 2D game is more than possible, but considering we just got Tears of the Kingdom, the next system-selling open-world adventure is definitely a ways away. Animal Crossing stands out alongside Mario as being extremely possible, and Nintendo absolutely has the incentive to pursue it. I mean, 8 Deluxe aside, New Horizons outsold every Mario title on the Switch. I feel like I have to keep emphasizing just how insanely well that game performed. But that's not quite the end of our process of elimination. We've compared AC's chances to other major titles, but how about comparing it to other multiplayer titles? A crucial part of Nintendo's output. Mario Kart Year 1. This is likely the multiplayer title Nintendo's using to sell Switch 2s in the first year, and really, why wouldn't they? Smash Bros? Not looking likely. With the recent news of Bandai Namco's team reassembling, and Ultimate taking 3 years to develop, I'd say that's a 2026 game at the earliest. 2D Mario, not an option. Mario Party, not a system seller. ARMS, handled by the Mario Kart division, wouldn't drop until after the fact. Once again, Animal Crossing presents itself as the most reasonable option here. Everything, timing, available IPs, business incentive, division focus, points towards it being one of the Switch 2's earliest bangers. Which brings us to our final question. When? When is soon? Well, as evident by its absence in my 2024 prediction video, I don't think we're getting it this year. Going by my assumed Switch 2 October release, they'd only have a couple months to squeeze it into, and like I said, Mario Kart is definitely taking multiplayer priority. But I think 2025 is absolutely our year. New Horizons and New Leaf both dropped at the beginning of spring and summer, respectively, but in the past, Animal Crossings were fall games, being ready just in time for the holiday season. I think a return to that strategy is likely. 1 year after the console's release is the perfect time to drop another heavy-lifting system seller, especially when Animal Crossing's more than proven its ability to move hardware. So that's my final guess, fall 2025. About 1 3/4 years away, which sounds like a while, but keep in mind New Horizons was announced 1.5 years before it released, meaning that even if the game isn't right around the corner, a reveal certainly could be. This would give the team 5.5 years to work on a new title, which isn't New Horizons 7, but based on everything we went over, seems perfectly reasonable to me. Personally, despite trying to temper my expectations, I am crazy excited to dive into another Animal Crossing hype cycle. But I'm fully willing to wait as long as necessary for the next title to be the best game it can be. You hear that, guys? Don't rush it. I can wait. If you're considering launching the next game without swimming, something is wrong. But as always, I'd love to hear what you think. Does my conspiracy board-esque speculation have some merit to it, or am I way off base? When do you think we'll see the next Animal Crossing release, and what form will it take? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you later.